Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you some of my bookish buzzwords. All right, so this is a video that I have seen multiple people do and thought I would kind of throw my hat in the ring and share with you some of my bookish buzzwords. So these are words or phrases that I see in either book synopses or when someone is describing a book to me that will make me even more interested to pick that book up. So things that I see that just kind of pique my interest just a little bit more that make me like really think that that's going to be a book for me. So I have 10 things, 10 phrases, items, topics, things like that to share with you today. So let's just kind of dig into this. So the first one on this list is Cold War. If I see Cold War, or specifically Cold War spy or Cold War espionage in a synopsis of a book, I'm immediately intrigued. I'm immediately giving that book a second glance, looking up Goodreads ratings. That is often what will kind of determine whether or not I'm going to purchase a book. But that right there, I credit this whole thing to the TV show The Americans. I watched that show many years ago with my husband, and ever since then have been very intrigued by the whole Cold War espionage concept on both sides of the line. So both Americans in Russia and Russians in America, the whole thing I just think is super fascinating, and I love digging into books about that. So that's my first one. The second buzzword that I have here is sisters. I love reading books about sisters. So whether they're two sisters that are estranged that are trying to find their way back to each other, whether it's about two sisters that are really close and it digs even deeper into that relationship, anything that explores a sisterly relationship, I'm intrigued by. It goes across all age ranges, so middle grade, YA, and adult. If it's a book about sisters, my interest is piqued even a little bit more than it already was. So yeah, that is definitely one for me. And I think that just has to do with the fact that I have a sister and I love our relationship. I have 3 daughters, so kind of just learning more about sisterly relationships. That's just something that has always fascinated me, the difference amongst sisterly relationships, things like that. And so seeing that as a topic in a book is going to pique my interest. All right, number 3 on this list is books that are set specifically around the World War I time era. So prior to Prohibition, like a little bit prior to, the 1920s jazz era, but, mostly around the Spanish flu and World War I and those types of things. I think my love for this really peaked when I read As Bright as Heaven during the pandemic. I read that book and was fascinated by that, and I just really enjoy reading books about the Spanish flu, but also just about life during that time. I just find really intriguing, and also World War I historical fiction I also find really intriguing. So specifically that time range will kind of make me a little bit more interested in that book. All right, number 4, I think is what we're on. I don't even remember now. But if it says that it is a hard-hitting blank, I'm in. Whether it's a contemporary, whether it's a romance, whether it is a historical fiction, if something's gonna pull at my heartstrings, I'm in. I love it. So I really gravitate towards hard-hitting middle grade books when I do read my middle grade books, but also historical fiction and, contemporary books as well. Like if something is hard-hitting and really delves into the emotions of the characters, that's one that I am more likely to pick up a book if I think it's going to tear my heart out. I don't know. I'm a mysterious person. What can I say? All right, next, Japanese internment camps. This is another one. I think ever since I've read a few of these over the past several years, but specifically they called us Enemy by George Takei. That really opened my eyes to I knew that this had happened. I have visited a Japanese internment camp when I was a child. I visited a historical site for that and things like that. So I knew that this had happened, but that really opened my eyes to some of the things that were happening in the camps and the reality of it some more. And so that is a topic in history that I just find absolutely heartbreaking and complex and just an atrocity. And even more so than the Holocaust. I'm not saying it's a bigger atrocity than the Holocaust, do not mince words, but it will pique my interest more than a book about the Holocaust. So, surrounding World War II. And so I've picked up a number of books specifically because they are about Japanese internment camps. And so that is definitely a buzzword for me as well. All right, so the next one then is books that are set in libraries or bookstores. I think this is common amongst a lot of us. We all like to read books about books or books set in libraries because we all love libraries. We all love bookstores. And so I'm assuming if you love to read, you love libraries and bookstores. I mean, I guess that's an assumption. But I love to read books that are set there or that really delve into the culture within the bookstore and the library and things like that. I've read a few of these, and I know when I'm reading, the synopsis of a book, if it mentions like it's set in a library, it's set in a bookstore sort of thing, then that will just immediately make me even more interested in it. So I definitely had to include that on this list. All right, the next one that I want to talk about is having an elderly neighbor that is a character in the book. So there are numerous ones of these. Specifically in middle grade, I will definitely pick up a middle grade book if it talks about an elderly neighbor. Such and such happened, and then they have to go help their elderly neighbor. I love that cross-generational friendship that happens there. But even within adult books, if it mentions an elderly neighbor or a grandparent or things like that, that sparks my interest a little bit more. I love exploring that relationship between younger generations and older generations and all that we can learn and the wisdom that we can receive from those older generations. And I love seeing that portrayed in books. All right, next one on this list is royalty. So I don't think I'm alone in this, but I love reading books about royalty. This started early in my book journey when I was in college still, and I was reading Philippa Gregory, the other bullying girl, and what else did I read by her? I started the White Queen series. I never finished it, but just learning about the Tudor history recently. And then I read The Royal We and the sequel to that. I can't remember the name of it. Recently, I've read the Majesty series and really loved it. So whether it is based on reality, based on fiction, whatever it is, I love reading about royalty. And whether that is, like the layman goes in and becomes royal or meets a member of the royal family, or it's just about the royal family, I love all of it. I think it's fascinating, specifically the historical component of it, but also the contemporary component of it as well. I will say that this is specifically in the fiction realm, though. I don't love reading the nonfiction stuff because there's no fun in that. I'm just joking. But I do specifically love reading fiction about the royals. And so regardless of what country they're from, I just think that it's fascinating. So, all right, next is that if there is a mention of a physical abnormality or a physical disability within one of the characters, I find that fascinating to read about. Purely from a curiosity standpoint, but also, from an educational standpoint sort of thing. I think it's fascinating. I read, what is it called? I can't remember. It's Sam Hell is the character though, and it is about a little boy who has his eyes are red, his pupils are red in his eyes, and so learning about that, or the blue woman of or the book Woman of Troublesome Creek, and it talks about the blue people, things like that that just make things that will make a person different. And then I love digging deeper into that and finding out the truth behind that, and what causes it and what's going on, and just educating myself more about that. But I love getting a first approach through a fictional book, kind of piquing my interest through things like that. And so I've also read lots of books about blind and deaf characters. Things like that as well. And so, yeah, if someone has a physical disability or a physical abnormality that just makes them unique, I find that fascinating, and I love reading books about that. So that's definitely one for me as well. All right, and then the last one on this list is that I love reading about our founding fathers, both in a, in a good light and in a bad light. I know that there's lots for us to learn about them. There are a lot of mistakes that they made. A lot of you know that, like, one of my, if not my favorite middle grade books of all time is Jefferson's Sons, and it talks about Thomas Jefferson's children that he had with his slave. And so, that right there is, not great, let's just say. And so just educating ourselves on our founding fathers, but also just the relationship that they had with each other, the relationship they had with their families, what caused them to be a founding father, what did they contribute to our country? Because even though I may think that Thomas Jefferson is the scum of the earth, there is no denying that he played a foundational role in making our country, what it is. And so what can I learn from that? What can I glean from that? I really love reading books about that time frame with those characters in mind. I've also read My Dear Hamilton, which is an adult book about Alexander Hamilton, and just learning more about his life. And I know I could read nonfiction books also and do research about the real stuff, but that does not captivate my interest as much. And so I like reading the fictional stuff and then going on a research journey. I find that fictional books a lot of times will whet my taste buds a little bit and give me that curiosity, spark that curiosity to make me want to dig a little deeper. Where if I just read a 900-page biography of George Washington, I'm just going to be bored. And so that's just like me knowing myself a little, and knowing what's going to spark my interest and keep me attentive. And so, yeah, I love reading books about our founding fathers as well. So those are 10 different words, phrases, topics that I find appealing when I am looking at book synopses, or when somebody is explaining a book to me or pitching a book to me. Things that are really going to make me want to pick up a book even more. My bookish buzzwords, if you will. And so, yeah, share with me some of your bookish buzzwords down below, or do you share any of mine or any of my bookish buzzwords, also buzzwords for you? And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe, and until next time, see ya.